Let's start.
Ja, 11:15.
Welcome to our session from pixels to the cloud about XR with Azure.
So, let me introduce myself. I'm Michiel, a Microsoft Azure MVP consultant at Soprasteria. What's interesting, I work a lot with Azure and she works a lot with XR and that is sometimes a real good combination. So just start. Saskia, who are you?
So I'm Saskia Groenewegen and I also work at Soprasteria. I'm the tech lead for immersive for the Benelux, and I'm also an MVP, but for mixed reality. And I've been doing virtual reality and related things for over 20 years now.
Long time.
Yes, research first and then software development. And it's like my favorite subject. So you're going to hear a lot about it. So let's dive right in. I'm going to start talking a bit about the fundamentals of XR and development in XR. First question, maybe not everybody knows, what is XR? This nice abbreviation, well, we use it for everything that falls under immersive technology. So technologies that kind of, expand your world a little bit.
So it's not only virtual reality?
No. It's actually three things, I would say. It's three core technologies. So immersive technologies is virtual reality, it's mixed reality, and it's augmented reality. And you might ask, what's the difference between those three things? Aren't they all the same when you wear some weird glasses on your face? Not quite. So this is virtual reality. You wear a headset and you don't see the real world anymore. Your entire environment is replaced by a virtual environment, a virtual world that you can interact with, that you can walk around in. And it's not just the virtual, the visual part, but it's also things like smell, like haptics, all that can be part of virtual reality. And the other thing that I think most people are very familiar with, augmented reality. I'm sure many here of people have kids or themselves play things like Pokemon Go. And the idea here is you have a device, usually a phone or a tablet, and then you place virtual information on top of the real world. And you can use that for things like here, IKEA, they have this app where you can actually preview furniture in your own house. You can see, does this couch fit in my living room or this table, and do I like it? Or you can play games with it. So that's like the other end of the spectrum. It's kind of a spectrum from VR to AR. So that's the difference between those two. And then there's the third one, which falls a bit in the middle. It's mixed reality. And some people say it's the same as augmented reality, because here also you still see the real world, unlike with VR. And then you put objects on top of it, but you don't just put them on top of it, like in augmented reality, but really into the world. And you do this by using those glasses like the Microsoft HoloLens or the Magic Leap or others. And then basically, because those glasses have so many sensors, they know many things about your environment, like where the floor is, for example, where your hands are, how you move your hands. And because you have glasses, you have stereo vision, so everything looks like super realistic. So it looks like you can actually have this virtual object in this space with you, and you can grab it, and you can move it around. So it's way more immersive, we say, than augmented reality, and that's the big difference. And there are two kinds, like there's like the old kind, I would call it, the optical mixed reality, where you actually really physically see through like some kind of screen, and you see the environment around you. That's this. And then there's the bit newer kind, pass-through mixed reality. But for example, the Apple Vision Pro headset, the new Meta Quest 3 uses that. And what you here have is actually a virtual reality headset. You don't really see the real environment. What you see is the camera feed from the glasses. And you can see that there, those glasses basically have cameras on the outside. And you're looking at a video screen, like just a virtual reality screen. And what that enables you to do is like you can like blend like really nicely and much smoother between the real and the virtual. But it also comes with some drawbacks, like latency, for example. If you have like heavy machinery and you really want to see exactly what's happening and don't want to see that like a second later, then you would use the optical pass-through, for example. By the way, I see Joost van Schrijck. He's a huge expert on optical mixed reality. Ask him any questions after the sessions if you want to know more about this. So that's kind of the basis for the technology, and then we still need to build our application. So that's my next Next topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the time. Oh, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I speed up a bit. Okay, so how do you actually build this virtual environment? Like, number one, you need some 3D objects. And you can build those yourselves by hand in 3D modeling programs like Blender, or Maya, 3D Studio Max. There are a couple of those. And that's like a whole other, like whole own skill set. And it's a lot of work and takes a long time. So what we usually do is just we go to something like the Unity Asset Store and we buy those things. And then we maybe adjust them a little bit in those 3D modeling programs. So that's how you get your 3D objects for your scene. And then you need to do the actual development. How do we do development? Well, you have like two big game engines, they're called, that kind of dominate the market. It's Unreal Engine, you know, Fortnite and stuff, and there's Unity. And they're kind of like, both of them have like half of the market share, and they're feature-wise, they're quite similar. So it's more like, you know, which one do you prefer? The big difference is Unreal is C++, and Unity is C#. And so we use Unity, so the rest of this is going to be about Unity. Maybe for the .NET developers here, it uses version 9 of C#, so that's a bit behind. So we don't always have the newest features. What's the other difference? Well, there's no main method, but like all those like game objects in our scene get like little scripts attached to them that control their behavior. And what does this game? Well, basically what we use is like use the development environment and then use the game engine, because the game engine gives you all kinds of stuff that is a lot of work to do by hand every time and that you always use, like interaction with objects and what else? Oh yeah, and it also gives you like platform abstraction. So it doesn't really matter what headset you develop for. It matters a little bit, but you can basically deploy to a Quest, you can deploy to a HoloLens, you can also deploy to your desktop. That's really convenient. So maybe to show you what this looks like. So this is our development environment in Unity. Like in the middle is your 3D scene, and then on the bottom you live your scripts and your assets, and on the right is when like in real time what happens. You can see what happens there. And on the left is like the objects again, but then in a hierarchy instead of in the actual scene. So this is an empty environment. This is what it looks like when you're actually doing stuff with it. And on top of that, then you also have your code editor, Visual Studio Code, or Notepad if you want. So yeah, that's basically how you do development for VR and AR and XR. And then the last thing that's also really important is UX design and storytelling, because those are quite different in like a 3D environment. Like for the UX design, like all your usual like 2D screens and stuff, all the things that you learn there are not really usable. You have to really think about like how do I place, because everything is in 3D space. So all of your interactions happen in 3D space. So how you place your user interface can be completely different. Like you can attach it to your hand, for example. You can attach it to the floor. You can like have it float around. There's all kinds of things. But there's like a whole skill set to deal with that, which is really interesting, I think. And then the other thing is the storytelling, because you're not like watching something, but you're part of it. Like you're in this world. So the whole storytelling also is different. Like it's more interactive for one. So yeah, so I think these are the main components of building a VR or AR environment. So lots of theory. Let me just show you some. Some of the things we built. So I'm going to show you a little showreel of some of the projects that my team have built over the last like almost 10 years. That's very hard. Softer. So just to give you an idea what that looks like, so let's real quick walk you through 3 different examples of those kinds of use cases. Like this one, like here, this is for the Dutch Navy, where we basically built a virtual version of the ship. Because, well, it's really, really expensive to have people train on the ship, because it has to come, lie in the harbor, and can't be used, and then like the new crew that wants to work on it has to train on it, and it's not usable, and that's like costs huge amounts of money. So building a virtual version of the ship and all of its systems helps with that. and this is what it looks like. And well, we basically just built a copy of the ship. And that's a very common use case actually for virtual reality environments, like building environments that are either really expensive, like here, but also not accessible or like really dangerous, or yeah, well, where it's basically hard to have them in reality. Then virtual reality is a really good way to do that. So another very common use case is maintenance. Here we use the mixed reality glasses, the HoloLens, to help those engineers to do repairs in this case. And how does it work? Well, you basically put on the glasses, and then the glasses detect the machine you're standing in front of, and can also give you all kinds of background information, like what's happening here, what do I actually have to solve, and maybe give you some extra drawings that help you. And in this way, the engineer is able to solve this problem much faster, and also usually by themselves. They don't need a more experienced person that goes with them. And in this way, you can do your work much faster, often. And that's really good because, well, many of those technical companies just don't have enough people to solve all the technical problems that they have. Mm-hmm. So they're very happy with this. And what you saw here is like, well, if you still have problems, then you can actually call your colleague who's staying behind at the office.
Or at home.
Or at home. By now also at home, to help you. So that's really nice. And then the last one is a kind of data visualization. Like NetApp, they have this software for farmers who have huge amounts of data about their cows. It's like unbelievable how much they know about every cow. Like every cow, the time the cow chews, there's a sensor that tells you the cow is chewing right now. And to interact with all of this data in this kind of dirty environment, we built this visualization with the HoloLens where you can like hands-free, oh, that was close, my Fitbit. Kind of hands-free interact with your data and have the data at the right cow, basically. So every cow has a tracker, and so we can actually project the data on top of the right cow, which is really useful if you have 1,000 animals.
We've created an augmented reality experience that shows relevant animal information in your view. Actions that you perform are entered into our management system automatically. Depending on the task that you are performing, the system really thinks with you. May that task be a vet check? There's no need for a second person giving you information.
Oh, and that was the end of it. So anyway, it gives you an idea. That's also a really nice kind of visualization. So as you can see, XR gives you many possibilities, and none of those use cases use Azure or AI. So imagine what we can do if we add that.
Yeah, and let's make that a smooth handover, because when you add some Azure magic in it, then you can make the experience better or more info. But first of all, a step back. What is Azure? And we learned already this morning at the keynote in the introduction that it's not just storage. It's just not only storage in the cloud. The cloud is not only the storage and etc. It's also not only generative AI. But what is Azure? When you ask all the new generative AI, they have huge explanations, but I just want to keep it with a simple statement. A cloud platform offering scalable computing, storage, AI, and networking services. It integrates with Microsoft product and supports hybrid and multi-cloud environments. Also in this sentence lies the power what we can use if you combine XR and the Azure part. In Azure, you can divide the whole Azure stack in a part in SaaS solutions, software as a service solutions like Microsoft 365, Dynamics Online or whatsoever, what you want to just swipe your credit card and then you get that application online, software as a solution. PaaS, the platform as a solution, and you can, for example, say just tools or database management that you just use from the cloud, or when you go really to the physical parts of the service, the infrastructure as a service, where you can manage everything, and then you can even spin up a virtual machine in the cloud, and that's called infrastructure as a service. And yes, when it comes to real-life solutions, it still often goes with virtual machines in the cloud, while that's not really the cloud is meant for to be, but some people and some companies still MacGyver the way to their life. So the pricing is, of course, different, where the PaaS is for platform as a service is the sweet spot for developers who want to use the cloud and build on top of what Microsoft is delivering on the cloud, still within the ecosystem of Microsoft. And that ecosystem and that spread all over the world is really huge. It's like, where is Azure now? Azure is almost everywhere, and every time that I present this slide with all those data centers, it's already outdated because Microsoft still updating every, I don't know, week, month, day. Often they add new data centers to it. So this is probably already old by presenting now. So if you want to see that, you can, where it is real live and active, just go to the website and then you can see where they are now having already data centers and still building upon. One small free tip, really pay attention where you want to have your application loaded, in which data center. Sometimes it's not possible in a data center, but sometimes it's also twice the money for the same compute power. So be aware of that. Azure is always based on region pair, at least that is the mantra that Microsoft's telling always. Not totally true anymore, but in general, if one data center goes down, another data center in another region will pick that up. So it has some so failure is not an option if you configure it right. Also within an Azure region, you have availability zones where you can manage to ensure that it's always available for you. And that's really important because if you have an XR device which on your head and you have internet connection, you need to have, if you want to use the power of the cloud, you need to have your system in the backend ready. And what can that be? Azure is not only the storage accounts, it's also virtual networking, functions in the cloud, a database like SQL, like Cosmos DB, general app services, and of course, virtual machines. This figure is of course not complete, as also Microsoft is adding new features and components every time. One of the things that is really heavily being used and more and more is the Kubernetes part. Yeah, you have Azure Kubernetes services, Azure container instances, where you can just build your own solution, deploy it to a container, and then let Microsoft handle all that scaling part and everything, almost everything from that application. And when that container gets rogue or the software is not really well written, so it has memory leaks or whatsoever, then the system can just kill that container, spin up a new container, etc. Really nice feature to make your backend reliable. As we are going further with the presentation, sometimes there will be a discussion about AI and about is it safe and should we be scared? I normally want to stay away from that discussion because technology and new and changes can be can make you have some fear or that you have cold feet, that you don't want to try the new features. If you want to really have the hard discussion with your manager, with your legal department, etc., or your compliance department, just point them to the Service Trust Portal, because that's the official statements from Microsoft. If you can trust that system, or that you can trust Microsoft, if they are not going to sell your data, use your data in a way that you don't want to. So there's one place to just work with that. So that's a nice nice thing to point out to your compliance and legal departments. So then we start going to use some Azure-powered XR. Why? Because you can have a scalable backend. You can have all the data that you are going to gather on your XR device or on your IoT environment in your own company. You can integrate all that information by scale and then just send it over to your XR headset. And yeah, that AI integration, we will see later an already built use case for that one. Yeah, and then it's something, it's already on the PowerPoint, so I didn't want to strive through it, but the Azure Mixed Reality services are not that live yet anymore. So that first bullet is in the middle is Microsoft is shifting a bit the idea and the focus. So yeah, Azure AI machine learning is already used and getting more used every day by integration of Azure AI Foundry to get all the cognitive services of Microsoft into the Microsoft ecosystem. So the cognitive service and computer vision and the visualization part is getting advanced every day. If you are going to use Azure AI IoT, then you can get all data sensors of IoT devices into your own solution. Yeah, and then sometimes you still need an Azure virtual machine for your own MacGyver solutions, as not everything is already really built that you can use it native as cloud is being used. If you are then using that not recommended way of working and use a virtual machine in your own solution, really make sure that you have to use that functionality, and that you really describe what will the application, how the application will react if that part is missing, down, or make it a high available system, and also check the price. But sometimes the alternative, not using XR, but really get a chip into the port, is more expensive than a virtual machine. So just make that, yeah, really think about that. And it's, of course, you have already an Azure Foundation with database, single sign-on, and API management, which can handle all the APIs, set an API management tool for it, so that you have, after a private API in Azure, you can reach all those APIs in your backend without exposing them to the internet. So a lot of components that you can use for Azure combination with XR. Yeah, and then we show, I think, one of the most interesting ones, right?
We do, yeah. So let's talk about how we actually use Azure and XR. And so this is use case we actually built, and it's about training and virtual reality with avatars. And it looks like this. So this is a project we did for a college that does education for nurses. And those nurses go on to work for defense, which means, well, they get their normal education in a regular hospital, and then they get sent to, like, you know, a war zone. And there's a really big difference between what they've learned and what they experience. And to bridge this gap, we built this virtual reality training environment. And it has several components. What we see here is a field hospital environment, where you have some patients that you encounter, and you, as the nurse in training, you have to figure out first, triage you have to do, which patient needs my help the most, and then actually go to that patient and figure out what's actually wrong with this person, what kind of symptoms does this person have, through several data sources, like looking at charts and monitors, but also really importantly by talking to the patient. And this talking part is where we are going to use AI. So this is what it looks like. This is actually being used at this college every day by around 60 students. So very happy about how much it's used. This is the old version with like a really heavy headset. And we also have a version on the Quest 3 by now, which is a bit lighter. Mm-hmm. And this is what it looks like. And then after you've gathered those information, you get in this other environment where you actually do stuff with it, which is not that relevant, but maybe nice to see. You kind of post-its, and then you prioritize the information, figure out what's actually important, because they tell you all kinds of things that are not important as well. And then in the end, you determine the treatment. So that's one scenario. And let me also show you the other scenario, which is this one. This is an ambulance. And what happened here is somebody was wounded in the field. You're transporting this person to the hospital, and it's going not well with this person, so he might die if you don't do the right things. And the goal of the scenario is to put you under a lot of stress, because this is a scenario that's super hard to train in reality with actors, or can't really train this in theory. And in this VR environment, you're really sitting in this tiny little ambulance. It's like it's moving, and there's like radio that you have to listen to. It's hard to understand, and the patient is dying, and oh my god! So this scenario is a very nice example for how to use virtual reality. And let me show you also a little movie.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Yeah, okay. It's like 10 minutes long. It's a lot of stuff happens, just to give you an idea. So in those scenarios, this project has been running since 2018. So in the beginning, all of those conversations with the avatars were completely scripted, which means every time you talk, it's always the same, which is not ideal. So we thought, how do we improve this? Well, Azure to the rescue, because using services like ChatGPT, Azure, OpenAI, and things like speech-to-text and text-to-speech, instead of just clicking on some speech balloons like it used to be, you can now have a complete, intuitive, very natural conversation with the patient. And in this case, the patient is, the avatar is your patient that you talk to, who has an OpenAI backend. And you, as the player, has to figure out what's wrong with this person through talking. What does this look like? Here's our first demo, just to give you an idea how it's put together. Basically, you have several klachten. Those are the symptoms. Sorry, it's in Dutch. You have the 3 symptoms that you have to find out. And then the patient on the right is the whole backstory of this patient, which, because if you just talk, then they will react to, they can maybe, ask, like, how are you doing? And they will tell you, oh, I have, I don't know, this happened to me and whatever. It's nice to have this backstory in your prompt. And in the middle, we basically check how many of the symptoms the player has already figured out. And on the left is the whole conversation. And all of those together basically give us a prompt. So it's a bit of smart prompt engineering. We send this to our backend, and basically that's how it works. And this is the first demo from like a year ago.
Hoi Jan, goedemorgen. Hoe gaat het met je?
Goedemorgen, ik heb veel hoofdpijn.
Is het erger geworden dan gisteren?
Ja, de hoofdpijn is erger geworden sinds gisteren.
Oh, vervelend om te horen. Heb je nog andere klachten dan?
Ja, ik ben ook kortademig.
Is het slapen nog een beetje gelukt?
Nee, het slapen lukt niet goed door de hoofdpijn en kortademigheid.
So that was our first demo. And this is what it looks like now in the virtual reality application.
Hi, can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course. How can I help you?
I have been feeling very weak and dizzy for days, especially when I stand up.
How long have you been feeling dizzy?
I've been feeling dizzy for several days now. It started gradually, but has been getting worse.
We will have to monitor that. Is anything else bothering you at the moment?
Lately, I haven't been eating well. Due to my pain and being busy with work, I sometimes skip meals.
What kind of work do you do?
I work as an administrative assistant. It's a desk job, but it can get quite busy and stressful at times.
Okay, do you have any other complaints?
I have had stomach problems before, but it was never as bad as now.
How bad is it?
It's much worse than before. The pain is more intense and constant, and it's affecting my daily activities.
Is there anything else you'd like to bring to my attention?
I have already shared all my complaints. If you have any questions about them, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah. So of course it's not perfect yet, as you can see, but it's already a big improvement over the scripted version it was before, and it already allows you to just have a really natural conversation with the patient. And the biggest challenge is to get the patient to stay on topic, right? So that the patient actually reacts like a patient in a hospital and not starts talking about the weather or whatever. Anyway, so what do we gain with this? Well, the students in the end are much better prepared for their actual work because they trained those difficult to train situations, which means they're usually more efficient, and also they can work more safely because they've gone through this experience. It also really helps with the student motivation. You get fewer dropouts because of it, which happened before a lot, especially because of the disconnect between the training and then the reality of the job. And well, now we have also added dynamic and realistic interactions with ChatGPT. So, and in the end, that helps to prepare those nurses much better for their actual jobs. But as I said, it's not perfect yet. So what are the next steps? First, the voice. I think it's an obvious one, because that woman does not sound like a patient who is like in pain and not feeling well. She sounds way too happy. To improve that, we can do custom voices, like with Azure Custom Voice or Azure Personal Voice, to make her actually sound like someone who's in pain and who's a patient. And we also want to work on the animations and maybe add some emotions as well. If you are interested in this, you can actually, if you speak Dutch, read all about it in the current SDN magazine, number 152, where it was the cover story. And let's move on to Michiel.
Another use case. XR training for, if you need the surgery for meniscus, and especially for prepping the operation room, because prepping the operation room, also, just as the other cases, sometimes the alternatives are more expensive. If an operation room is really occupied for a long time, that costs a lot of money. So you need to reduce that is occupied really short. So every person needs to be trained very well. And so you need to prepare everything in the operation room with instruments, and so the assistants for the operation can prepare everything before the doctors get in and ensure that the surgery starts. One of the things you can improve with this use case is to ensure that the assistants get trained in a virtual reality world, and even maybe in a mixed reality world, as you can also use actual sensors, switches, etc. Also understanding the real flow, so not only identifying this scissor needs to be used, or that scissor needs to be used, or that knife. No, really like also what is the sequence, because in a hospital the sequence in preparation is really important, and also the procedure flow is important. And of course, you can make the rest more efficient. Now, solution, of course, with Azure, as a bit of Microsoft fanboy. Azure is not always a solution, but I try to make it always a solution. Holographic step-by-step guidance, voice controlled, almost the same as just making the triage, but now for prepping the tools, getting the correct tools, getting the correct sequence on the right place. So, and make that as a virtual environment to also simulate the real operation room. Because if you practice it in a clean office room, if you get everything, or in a school where you don't feel the real pressure of the time, of the moment of an operation, it's not realistic enough to have everything really swept in your memory that you need to have the focus. So all the noises you can add it to it. So it's really making the experience really like the prepping in a real operation room. Of course, if you are going to train it, you can also create gamification in time challenges, scoring system, and a leaderboard for achievement. If you are really fast and following exact the workflow right away. For this solution, we use Cosmos database, cognitive services, IoT hub, and of course the Azure AI machine learning. Also for all the GPT models, we use the Azure AI Foundry also in other solutions so that we stay in the contained state of that Azure tenant and not leaving all those, even it's fictive, not the real patient data, we ensure that it stays within our company or our tenant or the tenant for the client, but not to Microsoft itself. So that stayed in that Azure AI Foundry. For this solution, a VR headset. But as already mentioned by Saskia, you can almost use every headset if you build it on the right way. And for that admin dashboard, just a web app website, and therefore just a computer. For managing the application logic, we handle that in a container, which is being served by Azure Container Services and Azure Function in a diagram that is over here. You can see that the application itself is, of course, running on the virtual reality headset. It has one private endpoint to the cloud. After that, it's just using all those different services, and besides the headset itself, it is all in the same Entra ID, in the same secure scope as you want to keep everything within your own environment, within your own company. For the web-based admin dashboard, that's just a website, so that's already built in your own Entra environment, so that's already managed on that way. Not only for the speech and the text-to-speech, speech-to-text part and the generative AI part, but also for analyzing and creating leaderboard, and after that, even creating PowerPoint report of it. You can use the Azure AI services for ensuring that you get also information about performance over time and analyze that. The Azure AI services together with delivering it via Power BI service. And the blob storage for the 3D models. So that's just storage for the models, but the content itself of the progress of all the trainees and etc. In a Cosmos DB for the backend, and also everything that's related to the dashboard in the Cosmos DB backend. The application itself of the web-based admin portal is, of course, in an Azure App Service. So, why? Faster and more confident operation room setup, efficiency, teamwork, and lower risk of inappropriate errors. Yeah, because you have the tools on the right way organized, etc. And from technical point of view, of course, really good scalable. As the pay-as-you-go model, you can just scale up for how many trainee people, how much people you want to train. So, by leveraging it, Azure and mixed reality together, you can really make that an improvement. And then, it will not stop here because we will go looking ahead, right?
Yeah, so that's where we are now. Now the question is, where are we going from here? And that's our next slide. So there are some emerging trends that we're seeing. AI, everywhere AI. AI for generating virtual environments and also creating dynamic content is growing. As you see, AI-driven characters, not just in our applications, but also in games, for example, or other training applications, or for conversational agents, also very popular. Then we have better networks, which means we have higher speeds, which means we can get more data, and sometimes the extreme huge models through the cloud, so we don't have to calculate those on our on our own headset, which isn't very strong a lot of the time. Another really big thing is that AR and VR, I told you there are three things, three technologies, but they're kind of becoming one. And most new headsets that come out are kind of mixed reality headsets that have a VR display, that have an AR display, like the Apple Vision Pro. And also they're becoming more and more small. Like you can see here, the X-Real glasses, they came out not too long ago. They're really, really small. They have a fantastic display. It's like the HoloLens, but then smaller. Joost disagrees. And so technology is just moving on, getting better and better all the time. And then one other really big thing is AI in smart glasses. Like these are the Meta Ray-Ban Wayfarers. They don't have a display yet in this version, but they will have. And they have cameras, and they're basically AI that can look at whatever you're looking at and also has an overview over your entire Meta Facebook history, everything you're doing on Google. And well, it can be really great, because you can say, hey, Meta, where am I? And they say, oh, it looks like you're in Jaarbeurs Convention Center in Utrecht. Or say, like, what did I eat this morning? And, but yeah, you can have some thoughts about this. But this is where it's going. So basically, this is where it's going. And this is a slide, if you want to take a picture, this is where we share some resources if you are interested in this topic in more detail. If you want to know more about Azure, there's the Azure meetups, like the Dutch Azure meetup and Azure Thursdays. In Rotterdam every year, there's the Immersive Tech Week conference, really cool, about VR. If you're interested in XR, you can come to the meetup from Lost in a Light Field, which is my personal one. And we also have a, I think, really cool video podcast with lots of content and lots of interesting speakers from all over the world who talk about all of those topics.
Lostinalightfield.com.
Lostinalightfield.com.
Yeah.
And if you scan the QR code, you get some more videos from our Soprasteria showcase on projects that we did in this area.
So
that's it.
That's it. And before we going to go for applaud, we have over here the QR code to if you want to connect with us. And
yes,
it's also we stay a bit longer, but you can have questions over here. But you can also just reach out to us also if you want to have the presentation, part of the presentation of more technical insights.
This is our LinkedIn profiles, basically linked in a QR code. And then
we have a small additional thing to get budget. If you want to have budget for these kind of applications, just say it's about Gen AI or call it JetGPT, because the models in your solution have some GPT modeling or large model. So if you want to have some budget, just say it's GPT and we need it for 2025. So if you want budget, my bonus tip. And a tip for us, we want also receive tips, right?
Yes, please give us some tips and judge our session.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.